or what I wanted to talk about is like a little bit more of a general topic. I mean, kind of the idea is I want to introduce you to what we've been building, or what I've been building during the last month. But also I want to give a general introduction of why we build what we build, like what the motivation behind it is. And the motivation is a little bit more generic. So it's about how to build websites. And this is always a very emotional topic, and there's always different opinions on it. So this is just a view on this topic, or an opinion. It's totally fine if you have a different opinion. That's totally okay. But this is specifically my opinion, and I feel it's also a popular opinion these days. So that's why I said, that's also why I put a more generic title in there, as in, I just didn't want to call it Fab City OS Suite, because that's very generic. Nobody knows what's behind that. So I called it more generally static site generators versus CMS systems. And just to get started, CMS systems is short for content management systems. So basically saying CMS systems is doubling the systems. So I think it's just CMS, static site generators versus CMS. Yeah, the reason, or why we did it is because we built a new website for Fab City Hamburg, and this is what I did during the last month. My name is Moritz. I'm a full stack software developer. I have my own company called Bitbetter GmbH, and I was hired by Fab City to do this project as a as a freelancer, basically. And we've been working on this for the last, well, basically since the Interfacer project started, so about a year and maybe 13, 14 months ago, I guess. Yeah, and also I've been building websites for a long time. I built my first website when I was like 12 years old, I guess. So 20 years ago. And since then I've been building websites with different technologies and different tools, and I've been through all the different trends and fashions and whatnot. And I still do it, and I still enjoy it most of the time. So just as a quick, recap on how websites work. Basically, it's good to know that a browser, the one that you're currently seeing, because my slides are web-based, a browser can only understand three things. There's three things that a browser can run for you, three languages that a browser understands. One is HTML, the other one is CSS, and the third one is JavaScript. There is a fourth one, I'm not going to talk about it. So for now, for us, it's only going to be three things. And HTML, you probably have seen this before. This is the language that has these tiny, like pointy brackets opening and closing. If you've ever written something like H1 or P or something like that, these are HTML tags. And HTML only defines a structure. So HTML tells us how text or components or elements are structured inside of each other. So it doesn't tell us anything about how it looks, could look different ways. And to define how it looks, we get CSS, which is a language that just defines how something looks. So it doesn't give us any structure. It's just, hey, this looks green, and this looks red. And how you use the green and the red, this is up to the HTML. So they go together, HTML and CSS. And then there's JavaScript, which is this third thing. And this is like the only real programming language. We call HTML and CSS, we call these markup languages, typically, or HTML a markup language. CSS, well, it is a programming language, but typically when people say programming language, JavaScript is what they mean if we talk about the web. And this gives us all kind of functionality, being able to click stuff and getting data from other places and all the logic and all that stuff. This is what JavaScript does. So this is how websites work, basically. So we got three things. Websites mostly always consist of these three things: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And we can get them to the browser in different ways. So the simplest way is what's called a static website. And this just means that somewhere I write a bunch of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. I can put them in a folder and put them on a server. And whenever the the browser of a user visits this page, it will display whatever is in there. So it's just files, and you open them, and the browser makes something out of it and displays it in a beautiful way, whatever you put in. This is the simplest case of a website. And then we also have dynamic pages. And this is a little bit more difficult. Still, it only generates, our browser only understands 3 things. And so the same thing happens in the browser, but on the server, we're not just having a set of files that already exist and just deliver them to the client, but instead they are being generated. So every time you open a page, so if we go to, I don't know, the New Production Institute, for example, this is a web page that uses a default CMS. Yeah, what's it? A question somewhere? No, oh, that was a chat message. Okay. Was it? I didn't know what the sound was. So if somebody has a question, just ask them. Feel free to just chime in. So for example, this is a dynamic web page. I know this because it uses WordPress in the backend, meaning every time I open this page, I press enter. Somewhere on a server, there are some calculations being made, stuff is being fetched from a database, and the server kind of generates on the fly HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and sends that to my browser. So this is what a dynamic website does. So it gets data, it does something with it, and then in the end, it sends the specific set of data to my browser. So it changes every time. It could change every time I open this website. This is what a dynamic website does. So these are the 2 ways that a website can work on the server. Either it's static, like it's just files, you open them, the browser opens them, and that's that, or they're being generated every time you open the website. Something happens on the server, some calculations, stuff is being calculated.
Because it's like so complex?
Well, the reason is questionable. We'll get to that in a minute, but that's just the way it works. We talk about the why in a minute, but that's just these 2 options. And that's the thing. Dynamic websites have been dominating the internet basically since ever, I guess, at least for 20 years. And all these typical CMS that you might have heard about, WordPress, Drupal, Typo3, etc., these are all dynamic websites, meaning, whenever you write something in WordPress, stuff gets written into a database, and when you open this website, the server goes ahead, reads it from the database, puts it into a template, creates a whole web page out of it, and sends that to your browser. And this is great because it's very powerful. Like, you can build huge websites from it. If you have like an online shop and thousands of articles or a phone book or whatever, this is really cool because it allows you to build complex stuff. But on the other hand, the downside of it is that it's typically very slow, and slow is a technical term here. When we talk about slow websites, then maybe it's because it takes, I don't know, 300 milliseconds, the server, to generate this whole thing. And that's what we consider slow in the web. So slow doesn't mean, horrible slow for humans, but slow in a technical way. And you can also notice that. So typically, if you open a dynamic website, you might notice that, it just takes a little bit longer, but it's in terms of human time frames, it's not that noticeable. But then again, if we're not talking about Germany and our typically very good cell phone reception or whatever, but if you are in a country where there's not good internet connections, or you are out in the Arctic Sea and using satellite connections, these kind of differences, like the speed, can make a difference, and also the size of these websites. And also these days, what's getting more and more important is it's not very ecological, dynamic website. So every time you open this website, somewhere a web server calculates stuff, wastes energy to produce this website for you and send it to you. Also, all the time, there is always running a server that serves to you this admin panel that you use, your backend, your admin user interface. There's always a server running just in case you want to open this admin panel now. The server keeps running and wastes energy. So it is not very ecological. We can talk about how much of an effect that is. It's probably not much, but it is the fact that having a server run all the time and dynamically generate all your pages And also dynamically always serve you an admin interface wastes more energy than just having a set of predefined files, and they are always the same and always being put out and cached and whatever. So also, if you talk about these typical CMS systems, they need a lot of maintenance. So I don't know if you've noticed, if you've ever used a WordPress system or a Drupal system or whatever, you get updates all the fucking time, right? Every 2 weeks, there's a new version that you need to update to. And this has a good reason, because there's a lot of security bugs or issues with these systems. And if you don't update them, people can get access to your data that they shouldn't have access to. Like they can get your user account data, they can get whatever data, maybe you have some restricted area on your website. So there is a lot of security problems with these websites. So you need to keep them up to date. That's the thing. If you build a website now and you want to keep it online for the next 10 years, you need to plan ahead and put money and people power towards maintaining the website. Even if it always looks the same, even if you don't change anything, it needs maintenance and security updates. And the data that these websites use, these dynamic websites, typically comes from a database, often a relational database. And this is kind of a black box for many people. So the data is inside of this database, and if you want to get it out, you need authorization, etc. So working with this data in a different way, like giving it to other people or making it reusable or have other projects use your data, like connect to it, is typically very hard because it's inside of a database that's not very accessible. So that's why these dynamic pages, they're very powerful, and I don't want to, or it would be foolish to say dynamic websites are stupid or they have no reason, but they are misused often today. So typically people today, they want to start their blog and they reach for WordPress. I would say that's a misuse of the tool. If you have a medium-sized company and you have 10 people, editorial staff working on your website, then yes, WordPress is a great tool to do that. But if you are, I don't know, Susan the blogger, and you want to run your personal blog that changes every 2 months, then it is a complete overkill to have a server running with the admin panel running all the time, generating dynamic content for a blog post that changes, or maybe that gets updated, or a new blog post gets added every 2 months. So that's just a very wasteful way of creating your website, but also a very comfortable way. I mean, it's easy. WordPress and all these CMS systems have huge communities. Like this is the thing. They've been thriving for 20 years. So it's very popular and very fast to get started with it. So obviously we can understand where it came from and why the situation is like this today. But during recent years, I would say this has probably been going on for like, I don't know, 5 to 10 years. There has been this kind of a Rückbesinnung, how would you say that in English? Like recollection towards like more primitive websites or lower, technologically low-tech website, if you want to call it that. I mean, it's a different tech stack. And people have been noticing that, well, maybe it is overkill to start my personal blog with WordPress. Like WordPress is like this huge, have you heard of Wenger Taschenmesser, like Offiziersmesser? And there's this one that has like 600 functions. And they are all great, but it's not a Taschenmesser anymore because you can't put it in your pocket. This is what WordPress feels like to me. You know, it's still a great system, does a lot, but it does way too much. It's just become a huge thing. And these days, starting a personal blog with WordPress is kind of a weird idea. I mean, 15 years back, it was the best tool for it, but now it's become so big and such a big thing that, yeah, a lot of people kind of switch to other tools. And there is this whole category that we call static site generators. And as the name suggests, they generate static sites. And so these sites that come out of these are very fast, typically, because it's just, you know, you build the site and you have this set of files, you put them on a server, and it's always the same. It doesn't change when people open it. There's no calculation, nothing needs to be run, no data needs to be fetched. It's all just there. So it's very fast. It's very resource saving. So serving a file is basically the simplest thing a computer can do, or a web server can do. So there is not much running in the background. You can run these websites on tiny, tiny computers. You can run them on a Raspberry Pi. You can run them on even tinier microcontrollers. You can also run them on like web space products that literally cost you 50 cents a month, and they can withstand thousands of visitors at the same time because there is no calculation going on. It's just very dumb in a way. Yeah, they don't need any maintenance. So there is no system, there is no database, there is no admin panel, nothing can be hacked, no data can be gathered. So they don't need any maintenance. If the website is live right now and you pay your server bills, it will stay online forever. It will not go offline. It will not be hacked. Nothing will happen to it. So yeah, it's a very kind of conservative way to keep a website because it doesn't require any maintenance. And these static site builders, they don't get their data, typically don't get their data from a database, but instead they get their data from files. So you have just a set of files that are your website's content. And this is pretty cool because it allows us to use existing tools to edit the files. Like you can use your favorite editor, you can use Microsoft Word if you want to, or whatever editor you choose. And you can also use other tools to send this website around. Like, I don't know, you can put it in your Dropbox, you can put it in on your USB stick, you can do anything with it because it's just files. And you can also version them or put them into a version control system like Git. And this is great because it allows real collaboration on the website in a public way. So if you have a WordPress website or a Drupal website or a Typo3 website, only the people that have an account for the admin panel, only the people you created accounts for, are able to edit this website. If your website is versioned on Git and you put it somewhere on a Git user interface like GitLab or GitHub or Git, and you set the permissions right, you make it public, then anyone can see your content and can suggest changes to it. So it allows a type of public collaboration that's typically not possible with static or with the common, the classic CMS systems, because they just have no notion of public editing or anonymous editing. I mean, sometimes you can build it in, like there is WordPress plugins, etc., but it's pretty rare. And you need to point people in the right direction where you can do it. Whereas the Git servers like GitLab or GitHub, it's expected that you have your content there. So people might look for it there automatically. If they know you're an organization, you put stuff on GitHub or GitLab, they might just, click and see, oh yeah, that's the website, obviously. And then, everybody can suggest changes to your website. And this is a great thing. This was also one of the motivations when we built this project we've been building. As I said, the project is called FCOS Suite. That's short for Fab City OS Suite. And Suite is just, the name that people chose for the whole thing, the whole suite of web-related tools. So the motivation was reusability. So we wanted this thing that we built to be, so that we wanted it to be reusable by other Fab cities, for example. So if tomorrow another city decides to become a Fab city and they have not a lot of resources, but they want a decent website, well, we wanted to give them something that they could start quickly with and have a decently looking website and get all the tools that they need. But also, I don't know, labs within the Fab cities or just companies or whoever wants to reuse it. So it's open source. We don't care who reuses it, and it's available to be reused. And we also wanted to allow and also to kind of push forward these kind of open source workflows and allow public collaboration. So the Fab City movement in general is very close to the open source idea and kind of pushes it. So we wanted to allow the same thing for our content editing. It would be weird if we were pushing for open source hardware, open source software, but then again, we were running our content editing in a completely different way. That just would be not consistent with our values. So that's why we chose to also do our content work, our website work in an open source way, which is through Git. And so this is now where I kind of define what the FCOS suite is, and it is a starter kit, meaning it is a set of tools and templates that we bundled together that help you start a static website with a static site generator. And it consists of Astro being the main component. Astro is the name of the specific tool that generates these websites. For these static site generators, you might have heard of other tools like Gecko or Hugo or 11T. These are very popular site generators, older ones. Astro is a pretty new tool. I think it's only been around for like 3 years, but it is gaining a lot of popularity. I will talk about it in a minute, but the other parts of the FCOS suite are a component library called FCOS Suite UI and a map component called FCOS Suite Map. So there's basically 3 projects under this name, and you can find them if you click on the link. I also put it here, gitlab.fabcity.hamburg/FCOS Suite. And if you open that, you will be presented with this website here, and you can see these 3 projects. And the Astro project basically uses or consumes the other 2. So these are kind of like parts of the top one. So this is like the top level thing. And this is also the setup that powers our Fab City site website that we've been using for the last weeks, and that we did kind of a silent launch. We didn't tell too many people about it because it still had some bugs here and there, and it still is. So that you can still find some bugs on our website. It's not perfect yet. We still have 3 weeks to go. So, you know, a lot of work can still be done. But this is how it looks, and this is also how the template looks. So if you go to this GitLab repository, there's a link up here that leads you to the example page, and you can see it looks the same, but it has a lot less content. So this is just an example page that shows you everything that the setup can do, and we're still working on that. We have a lot more functionality that isn't documented yet. This is still ongoing work, but in the end you're already able to do that now, but in the end it will be much better documented. You can just clone this project here, basically, and put your content into it. So it's one, I can also show you if you haven't been at the conference that we did last weekend. I can also show you how fast it is to get this thing up and running. So what you do is you take the link here from this repository, the clone link. Oh wait, I need to move my window to the new. In a second, I need to move to the other screen. All right. So I just do git clone and put this link, and what it does now, it pulls all the stuff down to my local computer. Done. And now I go into this folder that was just created for me, and I run one thing called npm install. This will now pull all the stuff that we're using, all the libraries, all the external thing that we use, installs it, done. And now I do npm run dev, and now I've got the website running locally on my computer. So this is now a complete clone of the website that's local, and I can, in this thing, if I go into the folder again, I open any kind of editor. This could now be Notepad or whatever you want to use. I'm going to move it here. You will see that there is a folder called Pages, and inside here you can see, for example, the Beispiele page that I just opened here in the background. So this is the content of this website, and if I now change this to Hello Fab Friday, and sorry, now press save, and you can see in the background it automatically changed the website. So now I can edit this website locally and work on it And whenever I'm done, I can just, you know, create my own fork or my own repository for it, push the content back. And I can also get this onto a, I mean, this is now locally on my computer. If I want to like set this up proper under a domain URL, I can put this on a web server just by taking a folder that's being generated. So the whole Astro thing basically just creates a folder that I can take and use an FTP program or use copy and paste or use a USB stick to put it onto my server, and that's it. So it's very simple to deploy, very easy. I mean, it depends on how you, what kind of server you use, what kind of web space product, but you can always get this up and running very fast. And that's the idea. And then you have this pre-existing layout that we built, and a lot of other features. And so I'm going to show you some of the parts of it, like the separate parts. I talked about this before. So this is what we call FCOS Suite UI, and this is a component library, meaning that we built, or we designed and we built components, website components that can be reused. And for example, so we got this image thing here or a button thing, and we built these components in a component framework called React, which is very popular these days. So you can reuse this even without Astro. So if you now want to go ahead and build a native mobile app, you can also reuse these button components in a way, or with a tool called React Native. Or you can build a completely different website with this that has nothing to do with Astro or nothing to do with Fab City. This is just general UI components that we built for our specific website and that can be reused by anyone. And these have no functionality here, so this is just a visual thing. Mm-hmm. You can fill them with whatever functionality you like. I mean, it could be the functionality that we thought of, but it can also be a completely different functionality. So this is one part of what we built in the last month. This is now kind of ready to use and can be used for other purposes as well. And then there's also the map. This is the other part of it, and you can look. I guess the best way to demonstrate the map is to look at the live version on our website. And the map is basically just the part, everything here below the header. This is still part of the website. The map is like this thing below it. That can be standalone, again, like with the UI components. You can set this up. You can integrate this into your WordPress or into your Drupal website if you want to, or you can integrate it anywhere else. You don't need to use the whole Astro thing. You can just use the map if you want to. And yeah, I mean, as the name suggests, it's a very simple mapping component. We're currently still working on redesigning it. Currently, it looks a little like the design is a little, looks like Frankenstein a little bit. But currently, we're working on a redesign, and we still finish that within March. So it will look a little different and a little nicer. It just shows. I mean, it's very simple in functionality. It's basically just to show kind of what belongs to the Fab City. It has a simple tagging functionality, but it doesn't have a lot of advanced functionality. We have ideas for that, but we're not sure if we'll be able to fund that in the future. For now, it's just a very simple overview of points of interest within a specific geographic area to show kind of like, who's part of your network or whatever. Yeah, and so we ship all of this together inside of this Astro template, FCOS Suite Astro. You can reuse it. It's open source licensed. You can do with it whatever you want. We still want to develop it, so we're still going to be developing until the end of March, until our funding runs out. We'll see how far we can get. There's a lot of features that we still want to build. We'll not be able to build everything, but most of it, I hope we'll be able to build. And then we'll see what happens with it. So we are quite interested to see if anyone is actually interested in reusing it. I mean, maybe this was just a stupid idea of ours and nobody's really interested in using it, because it's, it is a very specific way to build websites. And obviously we understand that for a lot of people, this is out of scope in terms of technical knowledge, because yes, absolutely do you need more technical knowledge than if somebody sets up a WordPress for you and then you go ahead and just use the admin panel. That's different scope, definitely. But we feel like that this kind of website building or this side of content editing is very much in line with the ideals of Fab cities in general, with Fab City Hamburg specifically, the open source movement, etc. And there is also work being done on getting it, or getting this kind of approach to building websites, making it more comfortable and making it feature-wise more similar to building something with WordPress, Typo 3, Drupal, etc., so that you have a visual editor and not huge Git UIs. There are projects working on this, and we are also experimenting with that. So we still, until the end of March, we will still be setting up a editor that's kind of a slimmed down version of GitLab, so that allows you to edit these pages in an easier way without requiring a lot of knowledge about Git or GitLab. So this is something we're trying out, but I'm afraid it's still not going to be the same quality kind of experience as you have with a visual, what you see is what you get editor that you get in modern CMS systems. But then again, I lined out the differences. This is much more optimized. This is much faster. This is much less energy consuming than having running a whole CMS. So yeah, I think that's about it. Are there any questions on this topic?
Herzlichen Applaus.